Hello, I'm Tamara Bess, licensed marriage and family therapist and director of the Center for Healthy Relationships. Today I want to talk to you about vulnerability. I'm sure that you've heard that in relationship, vulnerability is a really important piece. And indeed, it is something that I teach to couples that I work with in terms of being able to share equal levels of vulnerability in relationship to be able to have a healthy, happy relationship. But there's something else that I want you to think about, maybe at a deeper level, and that is the level of vulnerability that you're able to tolerate in yourself, for yourself as an individual. At the Center for Healthy Relationships, we teach something called empathetic self-reflection. And what that is the ability to look inside and to see what the effects of little t traumas that happen usually in the context of relationship are, and to have compassion toward ourselves as we sort of unpack what's happening and start to understand the reasons that we can be a little bit too hard on ourselves. And if you have a tendency to be a little bit too hard on yourself, that would indicate that being vulnerable with yourself and looking at feelings honestly would be something that feels threatening to you. And then take that one step further in the context of relationship, and you'll find that when you're encouraged to be vulnerable in relationship, one of two things happens. One is you will either feel afraid because you have your own negative self-talk happening in your head, which prevents you from being vulnerable, or since we have tendency to couple in relationships that mirror our reflections of ourselves, you may be in a relationship where it's not safe to be vulnerable because the person that you've matched with actually is a pretty close match to the negative voices you have in your head about yourself. The thing is, if you're not practicing empathetic self-reflection and learning how to get vulnerable with yourself, then when you're in relationship and you're encouraged to be vulnerable in relationship to make that more healthy, you're going to have a lot of trouble telling the difference between your own projection of fear that indicates maybe this person isn't safe for you to be vulnerable with, and an actual threat that might be coming from that other person. At the Center for Healthy Relationships, we can teach you the process to help you understand how to stay in the here and now, and while you're in the here and now, be able to tell when it's safe to be vulnerable and when it's not safe to be vulnerable. The other thing to know about relationships is that we tend to couple with someone who matches our own insecurities, sort of is the yin to our yang. And so the process of healing together requires mutual vulnerability, which means that you're going to be scared together. And if you're willing to work on it and be afraid and try really hard and be compassionate and loving and vulnerable with each other, then you can actually help each other heal those old wounds and create this beautiful new relationship that's different than anything that you've experienced before. But like I say, if you haven't learned how to practice empathetic self-reflection, then your ability to be in that relationship and be vulnerable there without feeling overly threatened and withdrawing is going to threaten the process. So I just wanted you to think today about the possibility that vulnerability exists at a foundational level before you bring yourself into relationship. And so if you're thinking about relationship or why your relationships are working the way that they do, or you're not in a relationship and you're thinking that you would like to improve your ability to develop a healthy relationship, that I would suggest improving your ability to be vulnerable with your own feelings with yourself. It sounds kind of a funny thing to do, but having that level of self-reflection is the only way that you can weed out maybe those old little traumas that happen in relationship and be able to move forward with a clean slate and without heavy baggage that prevents you from getting close to someone that you might be interested in or in love with. I'm Tamara Bess, the director of the Center for Healthy Relationships. My website is www.centerforhealthyrelationshipsla.org. Be sure to leave comments or questions in the comments section. Like my Facebook, like my LinkedIn or my, which other one? Facebook? LinkedIn? Oh, there's another one I can't remember right now. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk again soon. If you have any questions or you'd like to get started, give us a call. 626-657-0061. I'm Tamara Bess.